Welcome to Hermit Woods, where there's a story in every bottle.
We are live. We are live.
We're live?
We're live.
We're live.
I told you it was
We're live? I thought we had a minute and a half.
Where's your wine?
We had a minute and a half.
I
minute
have my
and a half
wine
ago.
right here.
It's amazing how much time flies when you're having
It's when you're having fun.
Cheers.
Hi, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers to the audience. Cheers,
Cheers.
Bobby
Thank
Penn.
you for joining us
Click.
yet again for another adventure with the Hermits. So it's Monday. Before we get into the topic, let's get this stuff out of the way that I know you don't like to have.
I
to
love
deal
this stuff.
with, but we need
I've
to
never
let
heard it
everyone know.
before, so
There's a lot of new people that come to see our show all the time, so we gotta get the new people
I know,
tuned into
I
the
know.
program, right?
If everybody would just join right from the very beginning, then they would all know
It would
this.
be a lot easier.
We could get through a lot more
Doesn't
stuff.
happen that way. So
No, it doesn't.
if you are joining us today, thank you.
That's all right. I'm going to smell this wine. It's really
You enjoy that
fun.
wine.
I will, yes.
We talk about.
And I'll try
while
not
we
to interrupt.
welcome- While we welcome our new guests, and if you are joining us for the very first time, thank you, and please consider following us. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching us on YouTube, and the subscribe button would be right below Ken. And if you're joining us for the first time on Facebook, there's a little bell on the screen, and if you click the bell, that will subscribe you to our Facebook channel. Every time we go live on YouTube or Facebook, you will get notified, and you'll be able to join in our story. And if you do enjoy watching the episode today, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like it, and share with your friends if you think there's anybody else that you know that would enjoy hearing the topics that we're talking about on our show. If you are with us, we'd love it if you'd share, if you're joining us with a beverage, share what beverage you're enjoying.
Yeah, that's always fun to hear about.
Yeah, and if you have comments or questions, put them in the comment section. We will get to any comments or questions that we can during the show, and if we don't get to them during the show, we will make an effort to get to them after the show. So let us know you're here. We'd love to be able to say hello on the show. If not, that's fine too. Sit back and enjoy and relax and listen to the conversation. Today we have actually really, for me, this is a very special opportunity. It's unique to me. I have not done this before.
I haven't done it either.
This is
Oh, no, I did it once before, early on,
So
right
feel like
after I
didn't-
bottled these.
I thought we did a show.
We
with
might have done a
these.
show when some of these were still in barrel.
We did,
yeah.
you're right. We didn't
And
finish them.
All of these
Yeah.
wines in bottle. So what we're talking about here is Hermit Woods for the last 12 years has made a wide variety of wines, but we have always sort of struggled with creating the right white wine beyond our well-known offering of Lakehouse White. Ken has been making Lakehouse White since what, 2011?
2012 was the first one.
2012 was
Yeah.
the first one. And it has reigned king as our favorite white here, but partly because it's our only white. We haven't had only classically styled white wine that you've been able to
Yeah,
put
we've
together.
dabbled in a few others. We had a kiwi wine
Yep.
for a while. We had a harvest apple wine for a while. We've had some light-colored meads,
Yep.
but those are meads.
Those are meads.
So the white wines have really been somewhat limited. I've put
Certainly.
most of the effort into the Lakehouse White, but I remember about 2 or 3 years ago talking to you and Chuck saying, you know, we live in an area that's a cooler climate. There's great opportunities to create what are classically thought of as white wines that have a higher acid component to them. They're mouth cleansing, they're racy, they're fun, they're exciting. They go with a wide variety of foods. So I'm thinking to myself, I gotta dig in on this stuff. And I started experimenting with different plums, tomatoes, working with different things, rhubarb, trying to figure out if I could create other varieties of white wines.
So along this way, this has always been a curiosity to me, because I know that you've been trying to discover, or you've been talking about the desire to create more white
Yeah.
wines to go along with our Lakehouse White. And you just described that many of the fruits here in this part of the world lend themselves nicely to this style. Yet it seems you have struggled to strike that right balance.
Oh yeah.
And so, what do you see as then the biggest challenge for you in striking that balance?
Most of it's been to try to understand what each component might bring to the glass. Like kiwi berry, I was so enamored with the tropical nature of that fruit growing here, right here in New Hampshire, that I focused on it, and it was too much on its own. It's intense. It's really an intense fruit. So it took me a while to figure out how I could work with that in a better balanced way. And
I think you discovered that with peaches too.
And I've discovered that with peaches too. Peaches on the other side they can lack something on their own. And so they need something more, typically. Rhubarb is fairly strong, has a sort of singular note. It's like a trumpet. It's like that. It's rhubarb.
Yep.
It's talking to you. And yeah, and so it was going back and forth and hooking up with a local producer in Hollis, New Hampshire, Brookdale Farm, that enabled me to, once I found a fruit that I liked, that they could provide some scale for me. You know, there have been times when I came across somebody had a tree full of nectarines and I had a chance to make a nectarine wine. It was great, but then that's it. I can't get
do
more nectarines necessarily.
Right. That's a big part of the puzzle.
So meeting the daughter of the owner, the founding father of Brookdale Farm down in Hollis, and she started talking to me about the different fruits that they had and what sort of volumes they could produce. So I started buying from her and asking questions, and it's a sort of slow process because I get certain fruit, I don't buy a lot of it to begin with.
Right.
So 3 or 4 years ago, I bought 4 different types of plums. And then 3 years ago, I bought 3 different types of nectarines and 3 different types of peaches. And I turn those into small batches of wine, which then will get blended in to a wine or something, but it takes me a while to find the fruit that I want. So I've started to narrow in on the fruits that I want. And both these two that we're starting off with, that we'll start, this one is the longest running now. It's called Winnie White. And this is the 3rd vintage of Winnie White. And it's changed a lot from the very first
Just
vintage.
in 3 years, yeah. Things
Just in
evolve.
3 years. So
Well, think about how much Lakehouse White has changed. Since
and that's changed quite a bit too. We'll talk about that. That's
Yeah.
going to be last
Yeah.
on our front. But this one has really evolved tremendously.
So before we get into the specifics of the wines, the other thing that seems true to me as I look back over the years as to why we made different decisions in this area, like peach wine was peachy, and pear wine was peary,
Right.
and so these wines were more consistent with classic fruit wines.
Right. They don't speak to you of Chablis
They
or
don't have
of
the
Pouilly
depth and the
Fumé or something.
character and- yeah, so
that-
that's what seems to me
Right.
to be part of the struggle that we've been through as well, is that we wanted to create something that's a little more than the sum of its parts, that the complexity of it is going to be.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the thing that makes wines so fantastic. Real wines just grab your attention and they take you on a ride, a great experience. And there are certain grapes grown in certain regions that do that. It's like the Chenin Blanc down in South Africa.
I was going to say South
I
Africa
was
came
like,
rushing into my head as you
Oh, it was just awesome.
said that.
You
Chenin
know?
Blanc, not a wine I typically find myself drinking, but when we were in South Africa, it seems like I
Oh,
wanted
that was
to have
it.
Chenin Blanc at every
It was
winery
it,
we went to.
right? It was the bomb, and it was
So
great. And there's a whole history behind that grape in that region,
So
which is fascinating.
you produced a whole series of apple wines and peach wines and pear wines and over the years, and none of them seem to really take hold for us anyway.
Right, so
maybe
they
some of our
would
guests
come and go.
enjoyed them, but they didn't take hold for us.
Right.
Because they didn't deliver that
Right.
classic
Right.
depth and character that we like in our wines.
And when you taste this,
Now,
doesn't that taste like white wine?
it does. It's remarkable. So now you have, including the Lakehouse White, we now have 4 classically styled white wines.
Right.
What are
For this year.
they? Yeah. Well, it's going to change every year, right?
Well, I'm hoping to keep moving these forward,
Okay. all
you
of
know,
these.
all 4 of them.
Okay. What do we?
But-
we'll go through them quickly before we.
So we're starting off with the Winnie White,
Yep.
which is a complex blend of multiple fruits.
It sure is. It's a lot of
Complex.
different fruits in there. Yeah.
Then we have Meredith Bay White, and this is the second vintage of this, and that's really the kiwi wine, but it's a kiwi peach rhubarb blend,
Okay.
and it's the ratio of those that really brings it into, to me, sort of classic white wine territory. And then this one is called Ozark, and it's for a very special plum called the Ozark plum. And back years ago when I fermented a few different plums, most of them, they all tasted like great plums, really enjoyable to eat plums. But this one called Ozark, I thought, okay, yeah, make wine out of it, so I made a little 5-gallon batch out of it. And I'm like, wow, this is great on its own. It's rare to find a fruit outside of a vinifera grape that gets fermented into something that on its own has character and depth. And
That's 100%.
100% Ozark. It's a pure varietal. It's like Petite Blue.
We have
just
very,
wild
very
blueberry.
few of those in our lineup of wines.
Because
Most
the
things are
fruit
blends,
doesn't do
yeah.
it. The fruit doesn't do it on its
Which, by
own.
the way, is true in grapes.
A
Very
grape,
few-
yeah, there's
Very
a-
few grape wines.
Right.
That stand
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we've got some Ozark fans in the audience. Both Priscilla and Kara. It's their new favorite. It sounds like.
Speaking
So
of the
it's-
audience, who's with us today?
We've heard from Karen and Priscilla are the comments so far. It's a smaller audience right now, though there might be more people watching that haven't commented. So if you're out there, let us know. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to that one.
So this is Winnie White, and this is going to be fun because we're going to sample through all of these.
So what would you like
And-
in this
It's
characteristically aligns with what? I don't know that it.
There's a couple of Italian whites that I can't remember the name of the grapes that went into these whites that I've had in northern Italy that I like, that are somewhat reminiscent of this. This is a completely stainless steel based wine, so there's no oak involved. Both the Lakehouse White and the Ozark have oak. We're going to get to those later on if they're a little richer, a little fuller. This is a little, there are some Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc wines that have some characteristics. There's some Chardonnay that has some characteristics like this out of like the Loire Valley or something like that. Those French Chardonnays that are pure stainless steel that have this sort of complex notes. To me, this has a lot of sort of melon characteristic. There's sort of a cantaloupe melon-like character to it. There's no melon in it at all. That's some experiments for this fall, are melons.
So what is in it?
This is, has now a big dose of the Ozark plum in it. It has quite a bit of peach, quite a bit of a unripe tomato. So I figured out that tomatoes get their aroma when they ripen and turn red. They have their racy flavor throughout their life. So I have a farmer that grows red heirloom tomatoes for me. But he picks them just before they turn red and freezes them. And he always, I'm just checking, Ken. This is Bob Perkins down
You're
at
gonna
Auburn
buy
Field
these,
Farm.
right? They're not right.
He always, I'm just double checking. You want 100 pounds of these, right? I was like, yep, that's what I want. And
You must love it because it's the last few days of the last few weeks or whatever of the ripening that is the riskiest for farmers.
it is tricky, yeah, because pests and other things, the fruit becomes ripe and puts out its aroma to attract things to spread its seeds.
Right.
And so And he likes it because they're fully ripe, so he gets the full weight of the fruit, the tomato, to sell. But it makes a huge difference because before, when I used ripe tomatoes, the tomato aroma would carry through.
It tasted great still. I remember the first batch of
The
Winnie
first
White
batch of Winnie White was...
It tasted pretty, I don't know, it was years ago and I don't remember exactly, but it tasted pretty similar to this, I feel like.
Exactly,
but the
Marika.
smell was...
Exactly.
it
So
was-
I was
it was
I was
off.
going for this flavor, but I didn't want the tomato aroma.
And there still was a little bit of that vegetable character. I remember that tomato also.
Do you get that?
No.
No.
But earlier, in your earlier wines, it also had it wasn't just in the aroma. There was some vegetable in the tomato when you were using red tomatoes. That came
In the red tomatoes, that would
Yeah.
come through,
You
right,
could
in the
taste
flavor.
the tomato.
Right, right,
I don't taste tomato.
right. So there's tomato. There's a pretty good chunk of tomato in here.
So when you say a pretty good chunk, I was under the impression that we're talking, 10% or less.
Yeah, it might be 10%, but there's like 6 things that are 10%. So it's still a pretty good,
What's the largest
Okay.
percentage ingredient?
I think Ozark, which is like 30%.
So one of the things I was thinking, this is sort of an aside, but it's an important thing to think about. When I look at the list of items that's in this wine, which you haven't mentioned two yet,
Yeah,
there's
the nectarines and the kiwis.
berries
And
Yep.
rhubarb.
and rhubarb
And the rhubarb. Yep.
and nectarines.
And nectarines and kiwi.
Yeah. So I was thinking we should, in the future, put that list of fruit in order of starting with the most prominent fruit to the least.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you do in geology when you describe a rock. You start with the largest percentage of mineral that's in that rock, and you describe it.
It's
Well, that's
also
the way
what
nutrition
people
labels
used
are.
to on nutrition labels.
Yeah.
And nutrition as well.
Right. So it's
That makes sense.
this
Right.
they're just an organization. It's an unorganized collection of ingredients. But it would be helpful for me to look at that label
Right.
and have that. So we just something to think about in the future as we put these labels together.
All right.
Put them in order.
That'd
Because
be
I'm always
fine.
asking you,
That'd be fine.
what's the percentage or what's the
Yeah, so it's probably, percentage-wise, it's probably plum, peach, tomato, which includes nectarine. Nectarine's a small amount.
Why does
Rhubarb
that
and
tomato includes nectarines?
No, sorry, the peach nectarine. That's what I think of. They have very similar flavor profiles. So, Ozark, peach, tomato. I think kiwi, rhubarb, nectarine are all, single-digit percentage in there. A lot of them are experiments that blend well, so I can use my experiments into wine. Anyway, I really like the way this blend came out. This takes more effort than Lakehouse White for me to make now.
Well,
This Winnie
it
White.
has more ingredients.
And it's finding that balance, and it still is amazing to me that a small percentage changes stuff drastically.
And no oak
And no oak, right?
anywhere. Not in fermentation.
Not in fermentation, not in aging. Both the first two that we have are no oak.
How long would you suggest, like if you bought a bottle of this today, would you recommend drinking it within a year or two probably?
I'd say
Or
2
is-
years, yeah. It's
Probably not one to hang
It's
on to.
right on right now.
Yeah.
It's meant to be consumed. I've made some modifications to our tasting menu. I want to have a couple of whites on there. It's summertime. They're ready to go. And the reason I wanted to taste all 4 of these, should bring this up, we got invited to go to a very special wine tasting event down in Maryland. 12 selected wineries across the entire East Coast. And it's an opportunity for winemakers to taste each other's wines and talk about the growing of the grapes, the processing of the wine into production. And Carlo DeVito had recommended us to the person who was running it, and Joe Fiola from the university is involved with it. So it's going to be a good group of people, and the first time for us. It's the second annual event of this to take place. And so we're going down there, and we need to select a white and a red to present to these other 12 winemakers and the media. And so I wanted to review these again so that we could decide, and we're going to choose a wine tonight that we're going to ship to Maryland to get ready
When
for.
is this?
August
event?
1st, which is a Tuesday. So the Monday before, live, on the 31st, we will probably be in Pennsylvania on our motorcycles
I was
going
there,
down
or-
to this event
Oh,
at a
yeah.
campground.
So,
So
is
we'll
it
have
two
to
of
figure
you?
that
Maybe,
out.
is Chuck around? Do you know yet?
Doubt it.
Probably not. So probably the two of
I
you going
don't
down.
think it's going to work for him because we had other plans at that time, and we've changed those. Can you reach your glass? So this is only the second vintage of this wine.
Bay. And I remember last spring, you know, you talk about how for years we've mostly just had the Lakehouse White as our one white.
Right.
And then here we were last spring, and all of a sudden you bust out 3 new whites all at once.
Yeah.
And it was just overwhelming. And we went from having just 1 to 4 all of a sudden, and they were so popular, especially this one in particular. You didn't make very much. And
Right,
it
so
didn't
this,
last
the
very
first
long.
vintage of Meredith Bay White, which is this second one, was a smaller vintage because it was experimental, small scale. So I had 16 cases or something. And it flew, it disappeared, people loved it. And so for this vintage in 22, I was able to get more kiwis, more peaches, and put it together for a second time. So this is a kiwi peach rhubarb blend. And it's about 50% kiwis and about 50% peaches with a percent of rhubarb.
Again,
Rhubarb's a small amount,
little
but it's
bit
an
of rhubarb
important
goes a long
amount.
way, yeah.
It's an important component.
So, that's interesting. So comparing these two side by side, I find the nose on the Winnie White more attractive. I'm having a hard time really perceiving the nose
Right,
on this one.
right.
It's
This is
really
less aromatic.
hidden. But the flavor, this is fruitier, rounder.
Right.
It seems more together.
Yeah. And it could be timing. A lot of these wines evolve and express themselves at a certain time. And that comes and goes. And it may take years to show and then take years before it goes. It could take months before it shows and then only last months. But it's fleeting, it's changing. So to me, this still seems a little closed aromatically. And it'd be really curious to see if a month or two from now that it opens up more. But the flavor on this it's dynamic. It's really nice. The other thing that's really fun, these are all totally dry, too. So there is no back sweetening whatsoever. All that we taste is presented by the fruit itself.
This one's actually more like a Sauvignon Blanc.
This is more Sauv Blanc, for sure. This is the Sauv Blanc, Chenin Blanc. This is more of a racy white, tropical notes.
So they get the that
puckery, the
tartness,
tart.
puckery
Yeah,
tartness.
yeah.
Lingers
And
nicely in your mouth.
You're saying
Not
on the Winnie
overwhelming.
White that you don't taste tomato. I don't necessarily taste tomato on the Winnie White until I taste this, and now I feel like I can pick
Go
the
back to
tomato
the
out on
tomato.
the Winnie White. I
Right.
think it has a little, different sort of savory note to it from.
It has a
tomato.
different savory
It's
note.
different, yeah.
A different rounder.
And how
This
different
is
it tastes.
more, to me, more in lines with sort of a classic white. The Winnie White, like we couldn't come up with a grape for the Winnie White, or a place or a wine that we've had that tasted like that. But this is more like a Sauv Blanc.
I just had a very quick whiff of hot buttered popcorn.
Oh, you got popcorn.
Hot buttered popcorn.
Well, buttered popcorn is a classic flaw in beer, wine, cider. It's called diacetyl. It's a compound that's developed during fermentation. And so when wines or beers are fermented cool, like you're making a lager or a pilsner, there's a process you go through called a diacetyl rest. And you ferment your beer at 48, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, long and cool, and you develop this clean, crisp flavor profile. But you get this buttered popcorn note. Unless you let it warm up to like 62 degrees Fahrenheit for just a couple days, and that popcorn note that butter note disappears. It's called a diacetyl rest. And then you chill it down and you have your beer. When you spun to beer, it's a totally different process, as Ben and I discovered. But so that may be a flaw in the production that I and Ben didn't detect when we were making it.
Well, it was.
Or it could be a
it was very
combination that
subtle
shows
and
up.
Fleeting. I don't know that I even could get it twice.
I don't pick it up at all.
Yeah. So.
Didn't get any of that. And it may not be that cause either. It may be that when you put fermented kiwis, rhubarb, and peaches together, you get buttered popcorn aromas.
Yeah, and like I said, it's very subtle and very fleeting, and I don't think it's what you're talking about. I'm familiar with the diacetyl.
Yeah.
You've shared that with me
Yeah.
before, and I'm familiar with it. I don't think that's what I was smelling, but
What's really funny,
and
Ben,
I picked it up as something positive. I mean, that's
It's a
okay.
richness.
yeah. You know, this is becoming more aromatic as it sits out. So I'm thinking that another month or two in the bottle, this will express itself aromatically when it's first. I think this would be dynamite carbonated as well. Because it's a nice racy, yeah, that would be. This is a little bit more sort of like classic wine. So this would be one that I would bring to the table. There's 12 winemakers around. It's a round table. This would be a wine that would be more accessible and more. The Winnie White is so unique, so far out there. It may be like, we don't even know what to do with this. Thank you very much for coming here from New Hampshire. But that's crazy stuff. Whereas this, they go, wow, this tastes like Sauv Blanc. This tastes like, you know, something that we've had before.
Do you know who the other invitees are to this? If there's any other fruit-based
He
wineries?
mentioned, the guy who's directing it, Paul, he mentioned a couple of them, but I don't, he says he goes through this challenge each time. You need to invite enough to get the 12, but you don't want to have too many that you have to turn down
Yep.
if they show up. So he likes to hear, you know, when we said, okay, we're going to do this, he said, great, fills the slot, and you're the farthest it's ever come to our place, which is great.
Well, we're going to be in Central Virginia wine country too. Fun. From that perspective, too.
Poolsville, Maryland, just over the Potomac River from Leesburg, Virginia, where there's all sorts of. All right, so this one,
We gotta let make sure one of our club members who lives down that way knows we're coming down that way.
do we have a club member
And-
down there?
Right near there.
Anne Wickerham's down there, isn't she?
Anne.
Anne is, yeah.
Oh, wow, we have to stop by. That'd be great.
Definitely let her know.
Sure.
Because we end up down there a lot. She's always saying hello, and we always end up missing.
Oh, Priscilla used to live down that area too.
Priscilla's been all over. She's amazing. Priscilla, you know, I show up in Vermont, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm right down the road. You're always there. So now we're into Ozark.
So this is Ozark. And I got to ferment Ozark on its own for 3 years now. First as a single carboy, next as a small batch that went into Winnie White. And then finally last year, I fermented it twice. Fermented it one batch that went into Winnie White and one batch that I had enough that was kept separate, and it went into a French oak barrel.
That's this.
I bought all of her Ozark plums. She dedicated them all to me, 27 bushels.
We're gonna get them this year
Well, none of these are going to happen next year
because
because
of March,
of
May 18th.
the May freeze. They're all gone.
So you started this by saying I'm going to try and keep these going every year,
And then,
and now you're telling me that they're all not coming next year.
well, that's what I was trying to tell you at the beginning there, that we had
Hope to do it
a
every year.
event, a atmospheric
New England
climatic
wine.
event that has wiped out kiwi berries, wiped out peaches, wiped out plums, wiped out
Apples.
sweet apples, wiped out all sorts of stuff.
Devastating.
So these will be around. We'll probably sell out of these by the end of the year, and we will have none next year. Lakehouse White is a more complex wine. I make it ahead of schedule to store it. So I have 21 sitting in the warehouse. I have 22 down in tank.
So the impact
So-
it might have on Lakehouse White would be on 23
Right.
and
And I
25.
think I'm going to be able to get peaches out of New Jersey. And the rose hips look good, and I know quince is going to be fine. So I think there's no problem with making Lakehouse White. So this is a single fruit that I think is just really cool.
So interesting on the nose front. This one's the least interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's almost it tastes. What's the alcohol?
I'll have to go dig into my notes on it, but
It's written on the bottle, isn't it?
well, you could have done that. It's exactly 12.5%, Bob.
Sure it is.
If that's what you were looking for.
So I asked because at first I felt like there was
More heat?
a bit of heat on the nose. I felt like I got that ethanol on it. But that's not high alcohol.
No.
But now I'm not getting it, so it might just be that initial. It's amazing how it changes.
This is one of these wines, I think, that's going to be Lakehouse White, where this, given another year, this is going to be really awesome.
I love the
I think it's-
on this.
I don't know.
Well, let's get that in the library.
Yeah,
So
I
you
just
won't
need
know
to
what's
put one
gonna
in.
be like it.
I know.
So this of all the wines that we're trying to, this is the only one that's aged in a barrel, correct?
So this was aged in a barrel. And it went in there, and about 2 months later, I was, oh crap, it's way too much oak.
And you say
And I
this with
took it
almost
out.
everything you put in the barrel.
I know, because I don't like oak to take over a wine. I really don't like that because I want to taste the wine. I want to taste the place. I want to taste the fruit. I want to taste what it has. And it's like a bass line that's just overpowering the whole music. You can't hear the music or that thumping bass line. So that's, can be too heavy for me real easy. But it sat in a little 250-liter stainless steel tank for a couple of months, and then the oak subdued and the fruit came out, and it's like, wow, perfect. Just great.
I like the bit of richness that you get from the oak.
And then that oak adds that rich character because there's a sweet plum note. You know, if
It
you've
does,
had
yeah, it comes off
sort
as
of
if there's just a
Japanese
little bit of
plum
sweetness.
wines or sakes, there is that note that you get from fermented plum.
So that's what Priscilla's saying. She likes that oakness, and it goes great with Japanese cuisine.
Oh,
and she
I
was
bet.
wondering if we've ever experimented with adding rice to make a sake. And she said that's probably a whole different ballgame. We
That's a
probably can't get
whole nother
involved, yeah.
ballgame, Priscilla. I have wanted to pursue that. I haven't had the bandwidth to jump into that yet, but
Would we be
rice
able?
fermentation is just. I love sake, and
Well, and it is. So it's a fermentation. So we can do it under our license currently. Do you think?
I think so. I think rice wine is done that way. You work with a koji, you work with a complex biologic substrate to actually convert those starches over. So it gets a little bit like the beer world, that when you mash grain and you convert starches into sugars before you ferment them.
We don't have the space. I remember when we toured the sake producer.
Oh,
down-
yeah. Blue Moon, or what was he called? That was down by the seacoast.
Yeah, Blue Moon maybe.
He was great
Yeah,
great
we
sake,
got a
great
good
stuff.
tour. But the tables that you had to spread the
Oh,
rice out
yeah,
on,
it's a whole big thing.
it's a process.
It's a whole big
I
thing.
couldn't believe the amount that goes into making a sake.
Yeah.
It's night and day. It's nothing like anything else.
Yeah, it's very
Would be
complicated.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's simple yet complicated.
I don't know if
There's
there's anything
art.
simple about it.
Yeah, it's like mashing grain. It
Yeah.
seems like voodoo stuff for people that don't do it, but once you do it, it's not that bad.
Sure. Easier said. Once you do it, once you make a sake, which is like rocket science to get over that learning curve.
But it's not, yeah, but, you know, it's like,
Have you seen the movie? There's a wonderful documentary about
on sake?
about a world famous sake
Yes,
producer in
yes,
Japan.
yeah,
It's a very slow moving, quiet.
how they
documentary.
polish the rice grains. It's just a long documentary. It's very slow.
Yeah,
Couple bottles of sake.
yeah. Big learning curve
Yeah.
to get there.
Oh yeah.
Big
Yeah.
learning curve.
Generations.
Generational.
Generational curve. Right. But I don't know. I think this, on its own, has a lot going on for a single fruit.
It does.
Yeah.
It's not as complex as those, but it has a purity too that's very nice. It's like a violin. I'm doing a lot of music things tonight, but it's like that to me. It's got a lot of purity to it. It's really nice.
I think this is the first time we've had it since we took it out of the barrel for one of our shows a few months ago, 6 months ago.
Could be.
Yeah, same. There a lot of staff have been asking about it because we have all the others we have it on the menu, so they've been able to taste, but people haven't gotten a
So
chance to taste this
Ozark's
one.
on the new menu.
Wonderful.
Yes. All right. So here we go.
We should rinse. Because this is a very different one.
Oh wow.
Whoa.
Coming after.
Lakehouse White
Ozark.
is so different.
Woo.
Wow.
You know, it's
Even just that
interesting
little
going
drip.
back to the buttered popcorn thing. Ben, you know, joined the team here, got a lot of experience brewing beer and tasting different things, not a lot of experience with wine. And so with anybody who comes and works with me, I have them sample and write their own notes about every wine that we deal with. And then as we get into fermentation, I have them sample and write notes about as it progresses. Because that's what you need to know to make wine, in my opinion. And so Ben got to a tank of rosehip wine. And he's like, Ken, I think there's something wrong. It's just solid buttered popcorn. It's just oily, buttery popcorn stuff. And so I'm like, oh, crap. I mean, there's so much effort that goes in, as some of our people know from helping us pick rosehips. There's so much effort that goes into making that wine. And so I immediately came in, ran over, took a sample, and I got, nah, it's right on. It's perfect. It's rosehip. And so he has a couple of particular things in his taste format. This happens with cilantro. So cilantro tastes like soap to him. Soap.
That's a
And
genetic thing, I think.
rose hips taste like butter to him. So he's, you know, can't really taste Lakehouse White because it tastes like butter.
I can smell that. I get it more out of this than I do off it was the Meredith Bay that Bob got that.
So what's fascinating, and this is a really good message for any wine things, wine sampling, tasting, beer, liquids is all referential. If we did this in a different order, these would taste differently.
Yeah.
If we did them side by side, they would taste differently. And what I work at really hard here is to try to bring a very unique, a very flavorful entity to the bottle, to the glass. And so every one of them is a little different. And so when you have them at a certain place, it changes the experience of it.
So before we decide on the final wine that goes to Maryland, maybe we need to do this again and drink them all in a different order. Start with Lakehouse White.
We have a couple days. We got to ship on Monday.
So you have to ship it.
Why do we have to ship on
yeah,
Monday?
a month before it.
It takes 2 days.
You can't.
It takes 2 days to get to Maryland.
Yeah.
4 at the most. It's UPS. It's not
I want the wines to sit there for 2 weeks.
Well, that's fine. But 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Also, sometimes things go wrong with UPS.
No.
On occasion. Yeah.
So we can do this again,
Or not.
but
Either way.
I don't want to wait. than have it go.
It does.
After just my first sip of Lakehouse White, I've already decided what wine's going for. I mean, you've been developing this wine for 10 years, 12 years, and I think you've dialed in these.
I think it's a beautiful wine.
It's a beautiful wine.
I think it's a beautiful wine.
These
It's
wines-
so expressive and so flavorful and so rich. I mean, there's so much body to this, and it's bone dry.
Especially after drinking those other three, it's so rich.
It's so rich, and it's bone dry, which is crazy. Its specific gravity is 0.992.
In my opinion, hands down, it is your better wine.
It is the best one of those, of all these.
And that's not taking anything away. Those are all
No,
nice
those are all
wines.
really good wines. I love those wines, and I like the fact that we have distinctive, flavored white wines that express New England in a unique way that no one else has ever tried
There's
at
nothing
all.
like this
That's
in the
what's
world.
really cool.
Anywhere in the
That's
world.
what's really cool about it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I can't wait to see what those three wines evolve into in the next 10 years.
Yeah, you had a white face just a month ago or something. You texted me late at night, Ken, I can't believe this wine. What it was this?
That was the best wine you've ever made.
We got to try that once when I think we did
We did have a bottle of
Lakehouse
white face here
lineup,
once, yeah.
and there was a white face in there because that was sort of
There's
a
only a couple
precursor
bottles
to-
left in the
I
world.
just had one tucked away in my cellar.
Yeah.
And we were having mussels for dinner, and I said, I'm going to bring the white face out. And I was blown away. I've never experienced this. Is a 12-year-old wine. It was a white wine, so it aged a long time. And it was magical. And I hadn't had a whole bunch of drink that night before that, so
Right.
it was
Yeah, your
fresh. My
taste buds were sharp.
Pretty sharp.
Yep.
And I texted Ken right away and said, I can just get the best wine you ever made. It was just mind-blowing.
I need you,
That was
Bob.
great.
I've been searching in my computer and my documents. I have a printout of the Lakehouse White mussels recipe at home, and I was trying to find. I thought I had it saved in my computer somewhere. Can you find that and share it with
It should
me?
be on our website too,
It
with
should
his
be.
video, to how to make them,
Possibly,
how to
yeah.
make it.
But if you can find it, I've been waiting to. I wanted to share that to the world again. That recipe,
Yeah.
Lakehouse White. If you can get that to me soon. Because that is,
Jones and
if anybody has ever made mussels,
Yeah, I think this is the one.
this wine.
This is it.
We have a great recipe for cooking mussels with Lakehouse White, and it's
I mean, I wanted to do
wonderful.
this. I wanted to go through this, and I think
the
the Meredith
Meredith
Bay.
Bay
I think the
would- that
Meredith
would be my
Bay.
other vote.
I think the Meredith Bay is the bottle that we bring as backup. I mean, as the.
Second
So this event, we're going to sit around 12 winemakers around a table, and in the morning, each person is going to present one wine, white, rosé, or bubbles, and talk about it for a few minutes, sample it, discuss it, go on to the next. Break for lunch, and in the afternoon, do one red. Everybody's going to do a red one in the afternoon. And then, you're going to hang out and talk and drink wine. And
so you can have a backup.
Paul was saying, bring an extra couple of bottles if there's other stuff, if you can't decide what you want to bring. So I'll bring a Meredith Bay White as a backup. And then we got to decide on Hermitage or Red Scare.
So yeah, so
So
we
my
have 15 minutes left still, so we can finish talking about the Lakehouse White and that, and then we can talk about the Reds.
Wow.
The Reds plan.
We're done. Lakehouse White.
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Yeah, Lakehouse
So
White.
So what is?
probably Lakehouse White is the wine,
I think so.
and then Meredith Bay as a backup.
Right. I'm going to bring, I need to bring 4 bottles of the white to share so that everybody around the table has a good sample. So I'll bring 4 bottles of the Lakehouse White and a bottle of Meredith Bay.
So, to Marika's point, to talk about Lakehouse White, and this has got a storied history. And this started out, as we talked about a minute ago, whiteface.
Right. So in the
You
beginning,
had whiteface and, was it whiteface and Lakehouse White?
so at my house in my basement, back when we made Cabernet from California,
Before we were a winery.
before we were a winery, I made a batch of rosé wine. I remember Chuck You know,
Straight
I had one of these blue plastic barrels I was fermenting in.
I remember when we
This
got
was-
those blue plastic barrels on Route 4. We were so excited. We found these great drums.
They're great. I use them to store grain
Yeah.
for beer making and all this stuff. We used them for maple syrup production.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember making this rosehip wine and pick these rosehips and clean these rosehips, and then it just turned into this mess. And Chuck was there to help me strain it. He's like, Ken, what is this stuff? And I said, I don't know. I think
find
it's
out.
going to be wine. It smells good, right? And all these white seeds floating all over the thing. And it turned out to be a nice wine. And I made a rhubarb wine. I made peach wine. I made different
This
things.
is the time in your career of winemaking where you were learning about the core
I'm
ingredients.
just throwing paint at a thing, you know. Just look at that color. Oh, that's fun. What does that do? And
Well, you got to be careful because the throwing paint thing was when Jackson Pollock was probably at the height of his career.
he's my favorite.
Right, but you were
He's-
talking about the time when you're at the earliest part of the stage, the throwing paint.
Well, because but I didn't throw paints the way he threw paints.
Clearly.
That's for sure. We'd be famous. But it's esoteric. It takes a while for people, and a lot of people don't see his art. And there's a lot of artists I don't see their art at all. His art, since we brought that up, I see that art completely.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So interestingly, I don't think that's the correct analogy. Because the idea that you're not, in those early stages, you weren't throwing paint. You were dealing with single colors.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm dealing. It's a bad analogy. So I'm dealing with single colors. I'm making blue. I'm making red. I'm making yellow. I'm making a different yellow. I'm making a different red.
Right.
And then I'm seeing, a little bit of that red, a little bit of that yellow
This
makes this.
is throwing paint.
And then this is finally
Knowing the right amount of this
and
the
a
right
lot
amount
of that
that
to end up with
with
this. Yeah.
Because you've
It's
been
interesting.
tweaking
So
the
we
ratio of the
had
fruit.
music analogies.
And now paint.
Now we have painting now.
Well, it's all art. That's what I
all art.
love about this. It's such a foreign landscape to me. The last 10 years have been such a wild ride for me as a scientist.
Well, you still use some of the science for the chemistry and things that go into the fermentation process. There is still that kind of science
But that's like the
base.
physics of mixing a paint and sticking it to a surface.
But what makes it
But
something?
the art part is how do you do the colors that then work with another viewer? That's the art stuff. And it's so, you can't put a finger on it. You can't dial it in. You know, it's so
I had
fascinating.
This great conversation not too long ago with George Barber, who's
Oh,
one of our cooks
cool.
here.
Yeah.
And we were talking about George is really into poetry. Poetry is something I've had in my life a harder time connecting with.
And my poetry connection is just lyrics for music.
Yeah. And so we started, and then I started talking about my photography as an art, and he's talking about his poetry as an art, and he's talking about his singing and lyrics, and then we connected it back to the wine, and started to realize
This is art.
two things that have come to pass for me in the last few weeks that have really, what is the word for come together?
Congealed.
Congealed, yes, congealed for me. One of the things that started the whole thing in my head was the idea that we experience everything in the world with every single one of our
Senses.
our senses fully. And I've never really said that before. I think I've understood it, but I've never said it. And once I said it, I started exploring it in my head. What does that mean to explore each of those, to experience everything you do
Right.
with every one of your senses? Because you don't think about it. You experience taste with taste, you experience smell with smell, you experience hearing the music with your ears.
It's a great. So
How do you taste music?
can I talk about this?
But we do that.
I know.
We do
So
that.
and some people do it better than the others. So we've been watching, there's a great series on Netflix called Unexplained. It's narrated by William Shatner. It's fantastic.
William
Highly
Shatner?
recommend- Yes, it's so good. But the last episode that we watched was, one of the things that they talked about was there's a specific, it's a genetic thing, or sort of, not quite a disorder, I guess, but there are people that do have very heightened senses
Sensitivities.
in sensitivities, and there's a specific name for it, that people that do actually like taste color or see sound.
Like synesthesia.
Yes,
or other,
I think that's
yeah.
the thing. Yeah, or obviously you get with people that are deaf often have better vision, and people that are blind have better hearing, and things like that. It's sort of an extension of that, but it was really cool. He got it in the last episode. They got into that, people that experience the typical five senses in different ways, and it was
Right.
really, really cool
Right,
to talk about.
synesthesia is a cool one.
My
Yeah.
thesis here is that we all
To
we don't know
different
it.
degrees, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of
Different
people,
degrees.
we block it off because we gotta
don't-
we gotta
yeah.
get down the road. We gotta think clearly about
we
what
don't
we're doing,
understand it. We don't. We're not trying to pick it apart.
or we're afraid of it.
But it's there for all of us, and it's impacting all of our decisions and all of our thinking and all of our tastes and all of our. It's all there. So when I fine tune this when we're talking to George about what are those things when you how do you taste music? How do you drink lyrics? How
Right.
do you smell?
How do you see
music?
music?
How do you see music? I mean, if you start thinking about how do you touch music?
Right.
How do you feel it? Well, that's a little more obvious. You feel a vibration. But we started digging in on those different attributes of art that are experienced by all
They're
of our
visceral.
senses. And
Yeah.
once you do that, once you start really letting your mind wander into those very esoteric areas
Right.
that are not obvious and that are not, it becomes much more real. You can start to realize that, wow, you really do absorb the world in a much more
That's interesting.
holistic way.
I need to taste music because I feel music. I listen to music and sit there and just envelop myself in music. I love it, but I don't taste it. And when I
You say you don't
taste
taste it, but
wine,
when you taste
and when I
wine, you
taste
experience
wine,
music.
I don't associate it with a particular like song or things because it's its own stuff. And maybe that's what that's maybe the pinprick into how do I taste music. I need to learn how to taste music. It's
Well,
already overwhelming,
If
but
as Clark Smith suggests,
that-
music can influence your taste.
right. Which
then
it
the
does. I went
inverse-
to his course in the Finger Lake.
Sure.
It's amazing.
So then the inverse must be true. You must be tasting music. I mean, you could look at it the other way, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
If music can influence what you taste,
Hey, your saliva tastes different when you're listening to certain music. Or,
clearly does.
something.
So if you imagine, that if you take it to the extreme, like if you, I've talked about how, what I refer to often as angry
Angry music, right.
Angry music, for me, in certain occasions, will actually give a negative taste in my mouth. It maybe in the saliva, it secretes a negative taste or
Right.
expression in my mouth that I don't recognize. I call it out, but it's there.
Yeah.
And so if you take each of these situations to the extreme, and going to the negative extreme is the easiest way to connect
Sure.
the dots.
Sure.
But then as you get better at talking about it, and then you start dialing in what is the positive analogy to that negative one? How do you
pull out those
experience
subtleties?
that beautiful tasting wine and relate it to Mozart or relate it to some musical or Wilco or some song that was magic to you? It can be done. You can start connecting those dots more easily once you break that wall. Once you burst that bubble, and you realize that all of those things are there. We just haven't connected the dots.
We've got to figure that
And
out.
it's a beautiful thing. When my conversation with George was so moving to me because we connected photography and imagery and poetry and the creation of those things as one and of the same. It's just, it's different mediums that is being expressed.
And you must have talked about this in school at Cal Arts. I mean, this had to be the focus of art. I mean, this is art. This is life as art.
Right.
All aspects of living, of interacting.
I don't know that. I mean, I didn't.
I mean,
make
you were
this
much
epiphany.
younger. It was
Yeah,
a long
much
time
younger,
ago.
So I could not have connected all that stuff.
You wouldn't at 19, you know. It just, we're starting to glimpse stuff. You see the fireworks.
This
It
might have
takes a
been
long
what
time
my
to.
professors in art school were trying to help me grasp.
Exactly.
And I didn't necessarily grasp it to this
Right.
extent anyway. But I fully grasp it now, and I put words to it and language to it in the last few weeks like I've never done before.
This is what age brings. It brings an old
Constantly learning.
failing
evolving
body,
and
but
stuff.
you come up with these
Wisdom.
great insights, these wisdoms, these things that younger people don't see yet. Takes
Because it
time.
takes an
It
enormous
takes a lot of
amount
time
of data
for this
to come together in your
brain
head.
to put it
Research.
together.
Fill my glass.
Right.
Oh,
We do. So actually, so we do have, so you have to bring a red as well. And you're
We have
probably
to-
planning
yeah.
Hermitage.
Well,
is
wait till you try this one.
possibly. So
This
that was
is a-
actually
this
when
is a cleansing
just us
one.
talking about the possibility of bringing a red. Karen exclaimed, Hermitage.
Well,
funny, Karen, that you should mention that.
so back in 2020, which was an epic
Oh, so this, wait, this is 2020 Hermitage?
2020.
Oh. Oh, wow.
This hasn't been out yet.
This won't be out for another
Yeah, I was
year
going to say,
or
we're still
two.
on 2018.
We're almost out of 18, and then we have a massive stack of 19 still to go. And then 20, when I made this 20, it was like, wow, Hermitage always takes a long time to like come into itself. And this one, right when I fermented it, right when I put it in the barrel, I'm like, I want to drink this stuff a lot.
It's still, it's lighter and fruitier. This tastes, I don't know, it tastes more like Petit Blue Reserve than Hermitage usually does to me.
Oh, it's way more complex.
It's definitely more complex than that, but it is, I get more of the fruity blueberry than I do usually with Hermitage.
So interesting.
This
So
is a
what
little.
I'm
This is a
imagining-
little more blueberry than elderberry.
And yeah, less of the elderberry, less of
Yeah.
the currant, that,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And-
definitely more.
One of the things that we talk about a lot with Petit Blue Reserve that I think you're calling out here is it's very approachable. It's
Well, that's the other one that we could bring as Petit Blue Reserve
right, but
from 2020.
well, this is approachable. This is so you're recognizing that approachability
That's why I
in a
think
more complex
this
wine.
this is like the red that if you bought a nice bottle of Cote de Rhone, a nice bottle of Italian red, and you pulled the cork and you poured this out, and you're like, yeah, damn, that tastes good.
Right.
How
First,
much
of,
was-
what I
yeah.
think is happening is the Petit Blue Reserve, because of the nature of it, it's a simpler wine.
It's simpler.
So it's more
Right.
approachable, and you get that wine like very easy drinking. I can
Right.
open it up and drink it,
Right.
and it's ready to go. Whereas Hermitage has always been more complex. It's bigger. It's
right.
got more going
It's like
on.
Lakehouse White. Lakehouse White is a bit of a pull. The people around the table are going to be confused by that wine. They would not be confused by Meredith Bay.
Well, that's confusing.
Well, I don't mind confusing. It's like the first time you hear a Radiohead album and you're like, what the hell am I going to do with this? And then you
Or
listen
the first
to it,
time you look at a Jackson Pollock painting.
or Jackson Pollock painting, and you're like, what the hell is that? And a lot of people, well, the experts say it's good, but I don't know. Why is that selling for 2.3 million? But the people that do get it go, how is that even possible? How can you walk into a flat sheet of material? I mean, it's so unbelievably three-dimensional. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's a whole forest of paint.
So what's the 19?
I haven't tried the 19 in a while.
'Cause
That's
now,
coming-
so
that's coming
the
soon.
18, what we're about to run out of, it's very tart.
Yeah.
It's not, it's different, definitely. I remember
Yep.
the last one being
Yeah, along
better.
along these lines, that was made 5 years ago. So every one of these vintages is a product of the environment, product of what I can get a hold of, product of my skill set at that time, and the universe's movements. And the 18, I think, is going to be a really good wine in 10 years.
I remember, yeah, you mentioning that. I think
I
when
think
you
it's
first put it
just
out,
a young wine.
I remember being excited about
And this
a new
wine might not
Hermitage.
last as long
So yeah, what do you think this one
because
will
it
be like?
came together so quickly,
I don't agree. I think it's gonna-
but I think it's going to age fine too. Yeah.
So on this note, we're going to leave you because it is 6:30.
It is.
And we don't want to take up any
So
more
are you
time.
planning on bringing the 20? You think, or
Hasn't been decided yet.
possibly the 20? Maybe a Red Scare is backup.
Well, that would be what I was telling Bob is that we need to bring 4 bottles of the main event and
Yeah.
then 1 bottle of something else
We should,
that's
we
fun to
should
share.
reserve this conversation for ourselves.
So,
Bore our audiences with our intricate design.
Oh, I bet they're
of how
interested.
we're going
They
to-
will.
well, it's kind of a fun.
Well, no, it is. That's what
challenge,
this whole
but-
show's been about. But we're
Right.
now getting into some very minute details, and we are taking up time. We're past the hour. So we will revisit this and let people know what we ultimately decide, because I
We
think
will.
there's still some decision-making to be made. I don't
Yeah,
think-
and
Because
you're
we're
probably-
going
and
we're
you're-
going to ship on Monday,
Yeah.
and then we're going to have a class that night,
Oh, there you go.
or this
So we'll let you know.
So you'll
broadcast
know.
that night.
Yeah.
Join us next Monday.
And we are probably going to broadcast from that event in a month or so. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I don't know
But we'll
about
also-
that, but we'll see.
We'll try.
In the
but-
meantime,
But in the meantime, we'll be here every day if you come and visit.
we will.
Share this with your friends.
Yes, we will.
And next week, we will be here live, as always, and we hope to see you then with another topic.
Indeed.
We will hopefully have that topic published more than an hour and a half before this.
Well, this didn't come to me until today, and earlier, when I
And once
texted
it
you
did, it
guys,
was an epiphany. It was
and I'm
that's
like,
perfect.
Perfect.
oh,
Yeah.
I got to
That's
do
what we
this.
gotta do,
I
yeah.
have to do this. I got to try these 4 because I got to decide on one of them to take down there, and that was it. So,
So thank you once again for
thank you all.
enjoying another Monday night. with
Cheers.
us. We really appreciate it. We hope you did as well, and we look forward to seeing you on a future show.
And if any of you want to come by during one of these live events, you would sample as well.
That's right.
Yeah,
Just a
we love having
just a
live audience.
possibility. Just mentioning that
Cheers.
again, and we have had that in the past, which has been great. Yeah.
Cheers, everyone. See you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you
Good
next
night.
week.